Hi everyone. Today I have Bharat and Anurag and we will discuss about AI platforms and some of the innovations which the team is driving. So let me start with the first question. In your platform, the product manager has a very different interface than the developer, right? So what exactly this product manager experience or see, and how AI assist this product manager differently than the developer?
Hi Sanjeev, good question to start with. See, the platform actually looks at the personas or the different roles who are interacting with the system in a different way. Like for example, the product manager, he gets a workspace that is tailored to him, which he can make strategic decisions. Like let's say in the product manager's workspace, he has different capabilities tailored within, like he can look at the market, he can look at the ROI and business value generation for the product, he can look at what are the backlogs, the customer requirements. So a PM gets a workspace tailored to him, which is completely from a product manager view. While on the other hand, like an engineer, he gets a view from the brain in a technical lens where he can look at, let's say, a technical complexity of the code base or a security depth with which he can understand the code level details. So to keep it simple, SASVA platform, the brain adapts its vocabulary based on the role. So to a PM, it will talk in terms of a timeline and product features, while on the other hand, to a engineer or a developer, it will talk in terms of technical details, code level complexities and files affected and things like that. So it adapts based on the role. So that's where we have different workspaces and interfaces provided by the brain to each type of personas in the platform.
When a PM starts the release planning work, they need to bring in different type of stakeholders together, like architect, a user or other product managers, right, into the same brain. Now, how does this collaborative workflow work in actual practice, and how AI helps in synthesizing all these inputs coming from different stakeholders together for creating the release plan?
So in a typical SDLC environment or the release planning environment, when a PM is planning for a release, they look at different aspects. They will be looking at an inside out view wherein they already have a backlog on which they want to prioritize maybe customer tickets or their wish list items, their own research items and so on and so forth. Whereas they will also need to look at the outside in view, where the market is heading, where my product competitors are going, what are the features maybe the analysts are talking about. So that completes the vision of the platform and also all the next release items, right? So that creates the real backlog for them. Now, in the process of making a release plan, there are various personas, like you rightly said, involved. Like for example, I cannot plan a release without consulting my engineering manager. I cannot plan a release without looking at the legal aspects of it. I cannot proceed without an architect's inputs. So in our platform, every different personas are represented by different agents. So when a PM starts planning for the releases, they get whatever tools they are using, maybe Jira or Monday or whatever tools they are using for their backlog items. Items are pulled from there. There are deep research engines that go into the market, perform the research, brings down the research items onto the platform for the external view. And then it gives a complete list of items that the PM should consider for the next release items. And it also helps them prioritize based on the business value, based on the effort required. And it looks at from all the different lenses, like for example, what the architect is saying about a particular feature, what the legal is saying, maybe you are using a third-party component onto that, what are the license costs and other things gets involved. And then it will give the complete list to the product manager to define or finalize into their releases.
My next question is about effort estimation process, which is normally broken because it happens in isolation. Now, because as you mentioned that your platform has visibility into cross-team dependencies, different environments and historical brain, does that mean the estimation process is now system aware? So tell me more about how the new way of estimation compares with the traditional gut feel approach.
To begin with, it was never a gut feel approach. I mean, majorly how the traditional estimation happens is you have a requirement. which goes through, let's say, architect and a team, engineering team. They will look into the environment requirement. They'll maybe do a spike, understand the process, come back, maybe take a 3 or 5 days spike, look at the feasibility of that particular requirement, and then they will do some POCs, short POCs, and then they'll come up with the estimation. Getting to the estimation phase also took some time, right? So how we have tried to solve it is that, okay, so now we have a historic data. Let's say we have the past estimations done for a similar task on a similar kind of a project, and as a organization we also have a large corpus of past estimations for different customers. We have replicated the same behavior what normally happens during a regular estimation. So now we have various different agents that will take the requirement. It will go through various gates, like a PM gate, validate the requirement, whether it is completing my business value or not, I mean it is giving me the right outcome or not. Architect gate, which will look at the feasibility of that by looking at the code, and then there will be a validator which will be looking at the past estimations done on the similar aspects of it. Once that is done, that requirement is broken down into smaller unit level tasks, and then each task then goes through a series of agents. Let's say there will be developer agents, combination of multiple developer agents, which will be playing a planning poker onto those requirements, coming up with their individual estimates on that. If that task requires a QA validation, a DevOps validation, a legal validation, so these dynamic agents will be attached to that task. They will also perform their own estimations and come up with the final estimation, which will be again validated, that whether there is any rework needed, if there are very many deviations from one developer's estimation to another, so it can go back to the same loop again. So using all these techniques and tools and validation gates, we have tried to come closer to what the actual estimation should be. So earlier the estimation, which used to take, let's say, 4 or 5 days, now can be done maybe in a 30 minutes time, and this will be close to the reality, because we are not only looking at the code, we are also looking at the past work done, maybe all the Git history, the pull requests, all the past estimations that we have done in the past, and then a historic mapping with your code base and the estimation. So organizations these days, a small drift in the deviation, organizations across are wasting billions of dollars onto that, and your estimation is never accurate, right? You may be hearing that, okay, we estimated for 5 days, it is going beyond 15 days, right? So we have tried to cover that gap with these multi-agentic workflow and estimation process.
Bharat, walk us through how a release plan becomes a brain. Like a product manager defines phases, sequence and dependencies, and the plan is directly executable by the engineering teams. There is no handoff, right? There is no communication gap. So walk us through the process, that how what product manager defines becomes a very clear and actionable plan for the developers.
So in our release plan, it is like a continuous pipeline is what we have within our brain. Like the way it starts is PM first looks at the connected system. He comes up with a plan by looking at many things, like the past history, how the code base has been evolved over the days. Like let's say there might be a good history in the past where developers would have did something. He also brings in a view of what features have been sold to customers. And if you look at it, we also have a market insight agent that can help you gathering knowledge about what market is doing today. We also have capability to integrate with systems like Salesforce or whatever your external systems like a Jira or whatever, to understand more about how you have been working with your customers, and even ticketing platforms like a ServiceNow, Zendesk or whatever. So if you look at it, PM has a complete context of what is required to make a proper release plan, and this goes like a pipeline. Now once the pipeline is ready, PM has breaks it down into phases and sequences the tasks, and while he does this, since he has a complete context, he is not just looking at the feature implementation with the current engineering team, he also has a complete view of what is required from other dependency teams. You might need some work to be done from external teams as well. Putting together, there is a complete end-to-end release plan created that gets assigned to the users. And since we have integration supported, we have integrations with your process management systems like a Jira or whatever you have. Once the plan is created, the plan is automatically published as actionable items. Like let's say you have a Jira as your system. The created plan gets transformed into actionable items like an epic, stories and tasks. And since the task also includes effort estimation and also the type of task, like whether it's a developer task, QA or whatever, it gets assigned to the appropriate individuals. So what happens is at the end of the plan generation, you have the plan readily published into your process management system, and that gets directly assigned to the respective team members, and they can start acting on it immediately.
And one more typical situation we face is that midway through the release, there is a critical dependency which shifts, right? Like for example, there is an API team, there is a delay in the task, or there is a security review which surfaces a new blocker. Now, in a traditional setup, it takes days to reset and replan and do everything. So how that works in this new setup when you have everything mapped to the brain?
So like in the current system, like when the product manager defines the release plan, he completely puts the plan by sequencing the tasks or epics or stories, whatever needs to be developed, puts them into multiple phases, assigns them into individuals and teams who need to take them, and that's how the plan works. Now, considering the situation you raised, let's say in mid of a release, there is a deviation. Let's say a API team raises a blocker or a delay, or let's say a security team raised a critical bug at the midway. Now the brain we have has a complete knowledge of whatever phases have been completed and whatever phases are yet to come and what is in progress. With this knowledge, the brain easily adapts to any runtime changes, and it ripples that plan to the other pending phases and make sure the plan is updated. So here if you look at it traditionally, what would have happened is in such cases where a plan changes in midway, you will end up rework using your spreadsheets, or you will do some Slack communication with your team. There is going to be a significant amount of time that you will need to rework on the plan. But here, since our brain has a complete knowledge of the midway changes, it immediately ripples the effect into the entire pending phases and tasks, and PM is immediately notified so that he can take immediate action within minutes or hours, not days here. So that's how we help in taking care of runtime changes.
But today, when we look at product managers' life, they normally spend 60 to good amount of time, 60 to 70% of their time in coordination. They chasing architects for feasibility, developers for estimates, QA for timelines. Now, how much of that coordination tax does the brain eliminate? And then also maybe if you can talk about the time which is saved for the product managers, how they can utilize that.
The entire process is extremely streamlined now. The estimations, the other personas' views, feedback, that is all taken into consideration. Of course, the PM can still go ahead and get it reviewed by the engineering teams and the engineering managers, developers and so on. But the entire process is pretty much streamlined and reduced by 80 to 90%. Now, in those remaining times, the PM can now think of better ideas, maybe do some sort of research about their projects, products, come up with a new product line. So they have time which they can utilize, maybe spend time with family.
Your platform lets a PM bring in data sources, user feedback, customer inputs, also market intelligence, and not just type the requirement into the document alone, right? Now, how does this multi-source requirements gathering work? And how does the AI help in structuring all this information coming in and making a meaningful impact on the process of release planning?
As you said, we have capability to integrate with multiple data sources and systems. Now, when I say data sources, you can bring in knowledge from your code repositories, you can bring in knowledge from your ticketing systems, or you can bring in knowledge from your past releases or documents that you have in form of SharePoint or Confluence. Putting together all this knowledge, we have like a pipeline of agents coming in, and again we have agents in two views. Like one is a persona agent, where we bring in agents like real world individuals like a product manager or an architect or a security expert or like a legal. All these kind of different agents collaborate based on looking at the context they gained out of the connected systems. We also have other type of agents, which is like an operational agents that we call, which is like bringing in views like how market is behaving in your product domain, or how like a business value you can add from these connected systems, analyzing your tickets, backlogs. So there are different agents that they collaborate. And once the agents collaborate and come up with their own views, we have a final reviewer agent that helps in consolidating all the results from different agents, and then we finally produce a result which is like so meaningful, and it is also like realistic when it comes to putting it as a plain plan or laying it down as a new release charter for the team.
As you said that this brain which holds all the historic and the current information and intelligence looks like it's a reusable asset. Now, when we do the next quarterly release planning, the system does not start from zero, right? It has the context. Now, what happens when the planning velocity after like team has refined this brain over like 2 or 3 or 5 releases? What happens to the overall process of planning?
The brain, whenever it starts planning things, it takes into consideration the entire context it has been provided, and the context can come in different forms. So it can gain context from the code base that has been shared to it, like whatever code changes that developers have done in the past, and also it also gets into a detailed level of analysis where it understands each and every change that has been done by the developers in the past, what kind of changes have gone in and where the changes has been impacted and how they have approached in making a change. So that's about just the code, but the context building happens in other areas as well. Let's say you have a connected system like a Jira. It looks at how your past releases has evolved, how much time the team has taken in developing and releasing the features. Same way it looks at ticketing system and things like that. So if you look at it over the period of time, the brain has a complete knowledge of how developers have been working, what is the current team strength, and how they have operated in the past. So a complete context is already built. And one other thing I want to highlight here is within our brain we have a component called a fact service, which is like a unique thing that we call it from our side, like where it has a complete knowledge of what is the real status of the data. Like for example, let's say you have something delivered in the past, or let's say you have some revenue numbers for your company in the past quarter and you have something for today. Now when you want to build context around such things, this fact service holds as a source of truth which has complete context of what is the real status of something, and it provides you as a ready context available for you. So with this, all the context available, whenever you do your planning, you are not going to start from the scratch. The context is already built and it is readily available, which in fact reduces the time you spend in the planning, and you get the plan created in a very short time.
One more challenge product managers they face is the visibility. Like they have the plan, they don't know what is happening on the plan in terms of execution, how the teams are doing, because there are multiple teams, distributed environments, and so on and so forth. Now, in your platform, how the visibility about the work, the execution process, the blockers, how that is enabled for the product managers so that they can be more proactive in helping the teams.
So here, like in the platform, we have different agents taking care of various phases of the releases, and all the completed tasks or the features, it gets immediately reported in our platform, and the product manager gets a clear visibility of what are the completed tasks and where the agent is currently working on making things better and delivered. Now with this, there is a real-time status reporting happening for the product managers in the platform level, and they don't need to rely on traditional systems. Like let's say in the past you would have relied on a Gantt chart where developers will go and update. You might not have a latest update. A developer would have updated a week back, but a product manager will still rely on that update. Here you don't need to rely on such Gantt charts or your daily stand-ups, because the real-time update is directly reflected in the state in the system, and PM has a direct visibility from the platform.
See, one more interesting thing about this platform, as I'm hearing, is that it takes a lot of time which was spent in orchestration or doing the estimates or planning hands-off, coordination, so on and so forth. Now, when that time is released, then PM can actually do real product manager kind of work, thinking about the product, visioning about the product, competition, and all those things. So, tell me more about how your system enables this kind of role for the product manager, which is the core product management role.
So we talked about the connected systems, we talked about outside in view. So for the product managers, for planning a release, the timelines reduced drastically. They can plan for the upcoming releases during that time, but then during whatever time they have optimized, not only that product manager has reduced their time, the entire release cycle has reduced, right? So the releases can go now in a faster and a better way. But at the same time, when the product manager suddenly gets that bandwidth where they can utilize their time better on building or going towards their North Star, their product vision, they can do the market analysis from within the platform, they can do the competitor analysis, sentiment analysis, all those kind of analysis can be done from within the platform. We have connectivity with many enterprise tools, so you have connectivity with your ticketing system, you can see what the customer's pain points are, you can also see what the market is looking at, what you can see that what the analysts are talking about, and then you can combine and build your product vision. At the same time, they can also look at what we call it as a greenfield, so they can look at building or envisioning a new product line, maybe adding new features, adding new modules. So all these are now available for the product manager. They have enough time now to do that.
So we talked about estimation process, and we all know that when we think about a 3-day task, it is not really a 3-day task because there is coding for 3 days, then there is a DBA review, then plus a day of environment availability, and then of course a half a day of security sign off. So there are so many other activities which are involved for doing the accurate effort planning, and also some of these are perception based, right? So can you articulate that how your platform and your brain actually helps in improving this process not only once but also in a sustained way?
Like I mentioned, that we already have a historical corpus of estimations. Now with that, when we get into the estimation process, there are hidden timelines, there are visual timelines, right? So now when we look at any estimates and basis the nature of the task, there are dynamic agents getting introduced and which work on the fact service along with the current task, right? So now those agents take care of all the consider all these aspects and provide their feedback at the same time during the estimation process rather than surfacing it at a later point of time. So that eventually increases the accuracy of the estimations. So the more you start using, your fact service will start building up, your historic estimations start building up, and these all combined together with the agents, we reduce the errors or the estimation overflows.
And that's again a compounding advantage that the platform provides. Like if you look at it, the brain is not just looking at what a developer or an engineer promised delivering. It actually looks at what was actually being done and what kind of environment he has done. Plus it also considers like dependencies and bottlenecks that would have been encountered. Putting together all these things, it comes up with a knowledge gathering or like training its own models and the fact service with what it has learned from how it has executed in the past, and that is what is getting used in the future planning as well. So that's why I say it's like a compounding advantage, where every time you do your planning or anything that you operate on, it gets as a knowledge, and that's getting in like a feedback loop within the system, which it doesn't exist in today's environments, and that's one thing we are bringing it to the table.
So thanks Bharat and thanks Anurag for your time as well as sharing your inputs about interesting things which are happening in the platform. Clearly looks like that for the product manager with AI, there are a lot of gains and there are a lot of new ways of working coming in front of them. So I hope that you enjoyed this talk. Thanks for your time.